Because we want care. Because an accredited clubhouse will fill a critical gap. Because 1 year at the clubhouse costs the same as 2 days in the hospital. Will you draft an action plan for consideration by the Adam H. Board of Trustees to establish a clubhouse accredited by Clubhouse International for their September 2015 meeting?
I can do that in December.
Can you explain why December and not September?
We have our levy. It's a 10-year levy. It's going to be on a ballot in November. And if that levy doesn't pass and we don't continue to have the funds to support all the mentally ill and all the addicted individuals with drug treatment, mental health care, housing, this conversation will be moot. So, if the levy passes and you get out there and you vote for it and support it and actively support mental health care, I will present a plan to certify the Pathways Clubhouse in December of 2015.
We appreciate that progress. That is tremendous. But I just want to clarify, you said you will do this if the levy passes. But what we're asking, though, there's a crisis now. People are suffering now. And we know that when programs are important, when people are in crisis, that you can find a way to do it. I'd like to ask you to commit to doing this by the September board meeting. Put that action plan into place. The eventualities of the levy and the contingencies can play out. But we'll ask you to put that into place by the September board meeting. Will you do that?
No, I have to hold to December. Thank you.
Can you tell us why?
Because if the levy doesn't pass, it will never happen. And to create a expectation that cannot be delivered would be disingenuous at best on my part, and I don't operate that way.
Mr. Royer, we appreciate your willingness to commit in December, but we know that the future is unpredictable. We know that there need to be plans put in place for whether the levy passes or whether the levy does not pass. And just as though the future is unpredictable, we all make plans. We all make plans. We have contingencies. We know that there are people in crisis now. We heard Brenda's story. We've got more stories like that in our congregations. We need care. We need care. Mr. Royer, we're asking you to develop an action plan. We're not asking how to do it. Can you develop an action plan for consideration in September?
Let me, 2 points. One, right now we have a person in New York City visiting Fountain House. We also have sent people to training, and I have visited Magnolia House. But if you don't have the financial wherewithal to do it, it won't happen. Secondly, when I met with Bread officials last week, I told them 2 things. If the levy passes, we'll either accreditate pathways on East Broad Street under Columbus area, or I'll recommend to the board that we'll give you a $500,000 matching grant. You go out and raise the other $500,000, and you'll get your $1 million clubhouse.
We appreciate that. We really do. And we know that we are close. We are looking for you to champion this. And I'm just going to say there are uncertainties, absolutely. We just want to know that no matter what happens, you consider the people, the stories that you've heard here tonight really are a crisis, and those people need that kind of care. There's always a way to find the money. The Cuyahoga County ADMH Board contributes about $500,000 to Magnolia Clubhouse. We're just asking you to make a plan that's not dependent on the levy. If you can commit to making that plan tonight, I guarantee you that you will have engendered a great amount of goodwill and support for whatever is coming for the ADMH Board. Will you put that action plan together and bring it to the board in December? We'll stand with you with the board.
Yes, we will work on that plan, and we will take it on the accreditation, the pathways, in December. And let me just also share, the statistic is 1 in 4 will experience a mental illness with a family member. When I hear these stories, it tells me about my family member. So please understand, I understand. I've lived that life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Royer.
So, just to sum it up, Mr. Royer did commit to adding a new ACT team. That's great news. We're pleased that he could make it tonight. He did agree to work on a clubhouse contingent on the levy. We need a little bit more.
We know that we're going to keep working for this clubhouse. We know that we can't predict what will happen come November. And we know that we are going to keep pushing. Our collective faith traditions are built on hope. And together, we have found hope in knowing that there is a solution to a gap in the problem. We are going to keep pushing. We're going to push for it this summer. We're going to push for it in the fall. And we'll continue pushing for it in December. Thank you all. We want care.
One message, 4 words. The violence must stop. In house meetings across Columbus last summer and fall, we shared stories with one another of daily gunfire, being robbed, and a general sense of being afraid in our neighborhoods. Since then, our research team has met with many people who deal with these problems on a daily basis, including the Franklin County Chief of Probation, the Franklin County Public Defender, the Franklin County Prosecutor, the Columbus Police Department's Criminal Investigations Unit, the Assistant State Attorney General, and others. These civic leaders and violence reduction experts offered several clear and consistent responses to our questions. Over the last weeks and months, we've learned that while crime has been decreasing in the last decade, there is still a high concentration of crime in many of our neighborhoods. A large number of those violent crimes are committed by a small number of people. Many of these people work together in organized networks. Law enforcement knows who they are. What else have we learned? More police, increased incarcerations, and longer sentence times are costly and do not lower the number of organized criminal networks. If anything, they increase them. These strategies reinforce an us against them mentality and further divides neighborhoods and chips away at the trust between community and law enforcement. The violence must stop. At this point, I would like Reverend Jeffrey Key, pastor of New Faith Baptist Church, to share with us his experience.
Good evening. I'm glad to be a member of BREAD for 17 years myself, serving 3 terms as co-president. It's good to be here tonight. A few weeks ago, I shared with many of you the impact of my only brother being taken out of this world by gun violence when I was 11 and he was 22. This was a colossal loss to our entire family. And today, as pastor of New Faith, I yet eulogize and officiate services for young people who are gone to the grave too soon. Oftentimes, the perpetrators of these crimes are present for the service, and many times they pay for the funeral. I find myself being angered when I experience these senseless homicides that are leaving behind the residue of a savage community, and people like myself who are yet discombobulated, asking the question, who really cares? As I reflect even on the worldwide stage of violence tonight, this hour, Baltimore and being killed by a citizen or an agent of the law is nothing new. It infuriates me with the ominous scourge not only of black-on-black violence, but the reality of unjust police violence that goes on in our community as well. And while the illusion may be that Columbus, Ohio is all right and we don't need anything else, I come to tell you tonight that we are one step away from being overtly Ferguson, overtly being Baltimore, overtly being all the cities that we look back and point our fingers at as if we're better than all of them ourselves. So tonight I come to tell you that we have been bamboozled if we don't think we need no help up in here when it comes to violence in the city of Columbus and in the state of OH10. I also want to share with you tonight that Dr. Martin Luther King in his writing acknowledged that people were convinced he was moving too fast and the time was not right now. He expressed that moderation means slowing up in the move of justice and capitulating to the whims and caprices of the guardians of the status quo. Then moderation is a tragic vice which all men of goodwill must condemn. Frederick Douglass wrote that power concedes nothing without a demand. That's why we come tonight to demand justice. Because I'm tired of the criminal just us system. We want justice, not just us dying in this city with no help crying out against this violence. These great voices, Frederick Douglass and Dr. King, these leaders have helped me in my theology and in my appreciation for a greater level of humanity. They have reminded me that if I do any less than confront these problems of our day directly with true power and persistence and demand justice, then I know whatever honoring God I'm doing at New Faith in the city of Columbus, that it serves no purpose, and more importantly, not only is my service to God in vain, but my purpose in serving the people that I love in my own community is in vain. And I have sold out my people if I don't vociferate against the violence that exists in this city. I need you to stand with us to say we need some help up in Columbus. Too often dreams torn, families mourn, and hope unborn. We need to stand together and do something about violence in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you tonight. Red rises. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Keith. The violence must.
We have a solution. While we know that no single strategy will end violence, there are proven strategies to reduce violence. We have learned about an evidence-based program called the Community Initiative to Reduce Violence, CIRV, or SERV, which is a proven, focused deterrence initiative to quickly and dramatically reduce gun violence and associated homicides. The initiative evolved from an initial project, Operation Ceasefire, led by a man named David Kennedy in Boston during the 90s. And today SERV is reducing violent crime in 75 cities across our land, including here in Ohio, Dayton, Toledo, and Cincinnati. SERV is a tested and proven strategy that tears down the silos that isolate efforts in communities to reduce violence. SERV brings together people and agencies that typically resist working together because of different agendas and competition for the same funds, our tax dollars. Through SERV, law enforcement, probation, parole, social service agencies, and community leaders come together with a carrot and stick approach to deliver a clear message that the violence must. You've got it. That message is followed with the promise, read the carrot, of a broad range of social services aimed at changing people's behavior on the streets. Though when violence does occur, however, the response is swift and strong, namely federal charges for gun-related crimes, the stick. The message is serious, but it's also hopeful. The results speak for themselves. In cities around our nation, programs modeled after SERV have seen a marked reduction in violent crime. Stockton, California, reduced its gun homicides by 42%. And in Cincinnati, not that far from here, the number of gang-related homicides was reduced by 41%. That's 4 out of 10, folks. That's 4 11-year-old brothers with their 22-year-old brothers alive at the dinner table. Under SERV, Cincinnati also reported, I need you to hear this, Cincinnati also reported a 60% reduction in the use of police force. Get it? SERV works. In our research, we've been overwhelmed by the popularity of the initiative. Local, state, and federal officials across Ohio have worked to implement SERV in various Ohio cities. The Attorney General, Criminal Justice Services, and U.S. Attorney have all reached out to Columbus leadership to use SERV. Just today, we got a letter from Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, who also committed to be part of bringing SERV to Columbus. Furthermore, and if you've been reading the paper, you already know this, just this past week, the Governor's Task Force on Community Police Relations released its report. That was Thursday. On page 28, it recommends SERV as a best practice for cities across Ohio. At this time, I would like to call forward Jim Lovers, speaking on behalf
of Director Carlton Moore of Ohio's Criminal Justice Services, and Michael Hunter, speaking on behalf of U.S. Attorney Carter Stewart. Mr. Lubbers and Mr. Hunter, each of your agencies has shared with us your work with community initiatives to reduce violence across Ohio. Your attendance here tonight is extremely valuable to us as we press forward to bring SERVE to Columbus. So I have 3 questions for each of you. Mr. Lubbers, let's start with you. Do you agree, sir, that many of the violent crimes in Columbus are committed by a very small population of known violent group members?
Yes.
Do you agree that an evidence-based focused deterrence initiative targeting adults is needed here in Columbus?
Yes.
And will you, sir, participate and support a collaborative effort led by Columbus's Director of Public